PWCI This Week. I'm the Mad Conservative Crime Fighter, and tonight we present the Crimey News Night as the shutdown from COVID-19 continues. And while there's no wrestling events happening locally, there's quite a bit of chatter on the wrestling front that invites some more commentary. Now, I've touched upon some of this in my news commentary special, the Crimey Editorial Report, which I designated not an episode of this series. So I will notate the relevant material again for this program. Do want to state several people gave the video a thumbs down, not agreeing with what I had to say. I do not care how painful stating reality to you is and how much in denial you want to be. The truth has to be spoken. Now let's start off with the elephant in the room. Late last week, Governor Pritzger announced an extension to stay at home until May 31st, much longer than all the neighboring states, basing his decision on a scary model from U of I Chicago that claims 2,000 would die from COVID-19 if they didn't stay locked down. The way the model was presented, it seems bloody obvious by Memorial Day they'll demand extending it to June 30th using the very same arguments with an appeal to hold on a little longer. Currently, over 90% of all the COVID cases are in the 5 counties that make up Chicago, yet has gone all in on a one-size-fits-all policy. However, according to multiple legal experts, the governor is in violation of state statute. Under the Illinois Emergency Management Act, the governor is limited to 30 days from the day he declared, March 9th, without legislative approval. Stay at home was originally to end April the 7th. He extended it to April 30th on April Fool's Day before his emergency powers expired. A lawsuit has been filed by Senator Darren Bailey in the 4th Judicial District Court shortly after the announcement, seeking a ruling on whether the governor could legally extend it to April 30th and an injunction on all future orders under the emergency declaration without legislative approval. The legislature has canceled all upcoming sessions through early May. Legal analysis by the Chief Deputy Director of the Illinois Appellate Prosecutor's Office, David Robinson, says his EOs only have the power of suggestions and would not hold up under a legal challenge. Judge Andrew Napolitano believes the stay-at-home orders are unconstitutional. Some community leaders state they will not follow the new order. A similar action by the governor of Wisconsin is also being challenged in court. We shall be watching these. I do wish to point out, COVID-19 will not go away by simply waiting it out, and there is no safe time to reopen. It is no longer about keeping the healthcare system from being overwhelmed. Now it's about keeping people from getting sick. That is impossible. Up on the screen are when the stay-at-home orders end in neighboring states. Some individual cities have their own end date. Several hundred Illinoisans have declared they will be hitting the highway to go to neighboring states for goods and services being denied them now. Another stupid requirement is that on May the 1st, Illinoisans will be required to wear masks in indoor public places. Why wait until May 1st if it's such an emergency, Governor? Why didn't you do this the day of your executive order? This is the man who secretly went around the White House to pay $17 million to China for K95 masks, where many other buyers report they are defective and completely useless. Great job, Governor. I've learned not to trust malls after observing how severely off they are. I'm going to flag someone new. Usually Chris Murray is cited for his projections, but the person who was so badly off he should be labeled a quack for the remainder of his career, Matthew Biggerstaff of the Centers of Disease Control, a top disease smaller, predicted 6 to 8 weeks ago COVID-19 would infect 160 to 214 million people. 200K to 1.7 million would die, 2.4 million to 21 million could require hospitalization, well over the 925K staffed hospital beds in the United States. This guy is responsible for the trillions of dollars of economic damage because elected leaders believed him. The man who created Obamacare, Zeke Emanuel, another quack, the brother of former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel, an advisor to Joe Biden, and an official with the corrupt as heck WHO, which thankfully had its federal funding cut off, said we should be confined to our houses for 18 months because there's no chance of survival until there's a vaccine for SARS-CoV-2, which is ridiculous on its face because it's not a death sentence if you only happen to catch it. By and large, only 2% of all active COVID cases are serious or critical. As a percentage of the population, it is way under 1%. Also, did you know SARS-CoV-1 became known in 2002 from China. Yeah, them again. And there's still no vaccine for it. 18 years since it emerged, no vaccine. But they claim SARS disappeared, so they stopped working on it. I have to wonder if they didn't stop work, whether it could have been used against SARS-CoV-2. Guess you better forget about ever seeing the sun again for those who are hard-nosed about house confinement. People are still going to say, well, mortality rate is 5 to 10%. It varies based on the known cases, therefore, we had to shut down everything. At the end of the day, the numbers are going to be quite similar to flu. Up on the screen is a snapshot of the numbers as of April 26 at 9 p.m. It finally surpassed the flu, but the numbers of COVID-19 deaths appear fishy and not accurate. China's lied repeatedly about the extent of the numbers there, while New York decided 4,000 fatalities were of COVID-19 infections on an assumption without a test to confirm. Some other states were also padding the numbers, including Illinois, where Dr. Nagazi Ezike actually admitted to it. New York's numbers are way higher than the rest of the country. Oh yeah, the governor's Andrew, little brother, Fredo Cuomo of the Clown News Network violated his own quarantine. He left his home and got into confrontations with people about not staying inside because he's sick with the virus. Do as I say, don't do as I do. What a hypocrite. Regardless, back to this Obamacare quack. Zeke Emanuel predicts sporting events will not be safe to attend until fall 2021 at the earliest. Screw this clown. Because of him, this is why everyone freaked out saying the healthcare system could not sustain the number of COVID-19 cases. And even then, with all these temporary hospitals were not or hardly used. Well, as I stated last time, the protests are snowballing. It is now to the point they are going on daily. The protesters are doing it because they know the rationale for keeping everyone confined has fallen apart and is untenable. For now, these are going to be the only big live events for the next few weeks, so to speak. Now there's a major protest scheduled in Springfield and Chicago on Friday, May 1st at the state capitol and Thompson Center at noon. It is the Illinois March for Freedom. Now this is footage from a protest on April 20th, organized on just a couple of days' notice. If you don't agree with these protests, too bad. They're not stopping and they're growing exponentially. They have every constitutional right to peacefully protest the actions of the local, state, and federal governments. The reason why they are protesting is they are over any fear of getting sick. They do not believe these actions were wise, thoughtful, and thoroughly rooted in science. They are watching their livelihoods destroyed, losing everything they worked for, and they are pissed. Throwing this up on the screen again, COVID-19 numbers versus other causes of death. But way outpacing COVID-19 deaths are isolated people who tend to drink and smoke more, and those sadly who could no longer deal with the mental toll it is taking. But we're not banning alcohol or smoking. The most asinine, moronic statement I had gotten this week is from an individual named Eric Cummins of Hannibal, Missouri. This is akin to shouting fire in a crowded theater. Some things are not legal because they are dangerous. This organized public protest will cause illness and death. The court precedent that will prohibit such activity has not been set. It will be in the near future, and it will be specifically related to behavior in a dangerous pandemic. This ignorant loon's elitist attitude, who does not have a basic understanding of the Bill of Rights, is how tyrants overthrow free nations and turn them into totalitarian dictatorships. I'm not telling you, if you're in a high-risk category, that you should stop isolating. Keep doing it. But it is not fair to force people who are low risk or even immune into confinement. If you're high risk, you're going to have to get a support group together to help you ride this out. A global Great Depression will kill far more people than the virus itself. Unfortunately, there are many who refuse to see that. They talk about flattening the curve all the time, but the numbers added to unemployment is going up at a 90-degree angle. We'll have to adapt our lives to the virus in public, just like we do with every other disease we deal with every year. We have no choice. A vaccine might never come. The terrified will just have to be left behind for now, carrying the basements until something forces them to get over their fears, come out, and adapt as everyone else moves forward. Meanwhile, in the wrestling world, COVID-19 is definitely doing a number on it. You've probably heard by now WWE is really taking it on the chin and is cutting costs everywhere. So let's go through this one by one in the timeline. Make no mistake, it's been a bloodbath at WWE. Vince McMahon is doing everything he can to cut the cost of the company, and the XFL was the first shoe to drop. The COO, Jeffrey Pullock, conducted a 10-minute conference call saying the league shutdown was directly tied to COVID-19 and everyone's laid off. Without stating it in the call, there are no plans to return in 2021. The parent company, Alpha Entertainment, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy on April the 13th. St. Louis, of course, had its own team, the Battlehawks. It is also listed the largest creditor at $1.6 million owed to the St. Louis Convention and Visitors Commission. Tickets for upcoming games are in the process of refunding. Why they can't return is because the second half of the XFL season was gonna help build the foundation and set up its future. Without those games, they lost half their earnings that they needed to survive to get to year 2. COVID-19 threw a giant monkey wrench into the budget plan going into the first 3 years, and it wasn't built to survive a world as it stands now. The long-standing league could absorb the financial losses, but start leagues could not. There's no choice here. Now there's a bit of a problem. By multiple reports, WWE owned 23.5% of the Class B stock in the XFL, while McMahon owned the other 76.5%. McMahon also owned 100% of the Class A stock in the XFL. Was that disclosed in the financial information of a publicly traded company? At the end of 2019, there was a shareholder lawsuit filed by the Oklahoma Firefighters Pension and Retirement System demanding answers on WWE's exact connections to the second XFL. But that suit was dropped at the end of March without explanation. Analysts from JP Morgan and Citigroup also asked McMahon repeatedly in a WWE earnings call about connections. He insisted they were completely separate. Remains to be seen if there's going to be any legal consequences to come from this. Right now, the XFL is up for sale, and there are supposedly interested buyers. McMahon would provide a bankruptcy loan with the stipulation that a sale wraps up within 90 days. We shall see if anything materializes. The XFL's commissioner, Oliver Luck, though, has filed a lawsuit against McMahon for breach of contract. Right after Easter, TV tapings resumed at the Performance Center despite the stay-at-home order. How is WWE getting around it? The talents were given letters to show law enforcement they were essential media. However, there were multiple police calls while Raw was on the air saying WWE was in violation and to go shut down. But the Orange County Sheriff, the Mayor of Orlando, and the Governor of Florida made it known an executive order was signed deeming WWE an essential business. Ron DeSantis declared WWE to tape empty arena events because there's no crowd and a very small group of people out there at any one time. He believes people are starved for content. All Elite Wrestling would also fit the qualifications for essential services. DeSantis, for example, cleared Disney to allow gardeners in to maintain millions of dollars worth of greenery since they'd be distancing from each other. A writer for the Orlando Sentinel did not agree with the designation. Scott Maxwell claims doing this plays into people's worst fears about government picking and choosing which businesses survive based more on whims or political patronage than science and public safety. And it undermines serious messages about the need for social distancing. The Sentinel makes a valid point. Businesses are starved for revenue and citizens are starved for paychecks. Why, for most businesses, is income not as essential as it is for WWE? Why is it okay for swayed adults to embrace each other and perform pile drivers for a cast and crew, but most everyone else aren't allowed to go to work out of fear we might stand or sit too close to one another? One anonymous WWE employee asked Orange County officials to intervene and shut down the tapings due to health concerns last week. We shall see. How do I feel about this? As long as everyone's healthy on the set and WWE pulled out multiple performers at WrestleMania when medical professionals determined it was not safe for them to get in the ring, they should be able to tape and broadcast matches to a worldwide audience. However, I cannot say I'm 100% comfortable how they got cleared to do this. The McMahon family has been tight with President Trump for years, and eyebrows were raised when the America First Action Super PAC committed spending $18.5 million in Florida. The chairman, former CEO Linda McMahon. Okay, there's your quid pro quo, a real one instead of the bogus Ukraine one. Linda was previously appointed as the chief of the Small Business Administration. There's also a suggestion this was done so WrestleMania 38 would be held in Tampa to make up for 36. On April 15th, Vince was one of the folks named as an advisor in the Great American Economic Revival Industry Groups Commission as a representative of the sports community. I concede there's an apparent conflict of interest and will not contest it. Advisors also include representatives of the NBA, NFL, Apple, Facebook, Amazon, banks, 3M, Coca-Cola, and McDonald's, among others. Later in the week, the next shoe to drop were the major layoffs. Up on the screen is the scrolling list of the wrestlers let go. All have 90-day no-complete clauses. Some of the folks on this list hadn't been on TV in ages, supposedly to keep the competition from signing them. A few like EC3 and Michael Bennett have been weighing out of WWE for quite a while. A few others were a bit of surprise. Enzo Amore actually made an intelligent observation saying all the same people crapping on the essential business is the same ones crying about people losing their jobs. Your non-essential alternative? No wrestling, no wrestlers, no jobs. WrestleMania 37 at SoFi Stadium in California might be in trouble a year out. An internal Los Angeles Fire Department email sees LA Mayor Eric Garcetti, one of the worst power-abusing authoritarian stay-at-home hacks in the country, suggesting that large gatherings such as concerts and sporting events could be put off for at least a year. It was also noted in the email that Garcetti would like to start reopening the economy, starting with essential businesses and small businesses, phased in over a period of time, 6 to 10 months. The venue itself, however, is actually behind schedule on finishing the construction, leading Taylor Swift to cancel a July concert, which would have been the venue's grand opening. At least WWE has 11 months to find an alternative location, and that search has rumored to have begun, even if they have to do it outside the United States. Frankly, WWE should move it simply because of how badly Garcetti has treated his own city's citizens. Join me now via online video chat is wrestling manager at Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling, Travis Cook. He is the host of America's Evil Genius on Truth Frequency Radio Sunday nights. Thanks for coming on.
Glad to be here. Glad to be on the program.
The state of the country and attitudes towards COVID-19 as the shutdown continues, subtracting the high-risk groups who have very good reason to stay sheltered. For the healthy, low-risk, or immune, the sides have become defined on opening the economy, those who are living under fear, and those who are living under anger. How do you see things as of now?
Well, as of right now, and there's any number of things I could say about it, but as of right now, I think we as a society have overreacted. That would be the best way I could put it. That's not to say that I don't think the virus is not a significant thing. It is. It's clearly something that needs to be taken seriously, and that people need to take precautions on. But if you boil down the numbers, and people don't like to do this, but if you boil down the numbers, we're looking at something that has a fatality rate of 1% to 2%. That's not insignificant. Every one of those deaths is a tragedy, absolutely. But when you look at the forecasts of how many people they are forecasting to die from this, it's around 60,000 or so right now. That's the current models are showing that. Well, we have 330 million people in the United States of America. 60,000, if you do the math, comes to less than 0.1% of the population. So does it really make sense for 330 million people to have their lives significantly negatively impacted? Does it make sense for over, 24 million, 26 million people now to be out of work, unemployed, to potentially save the lives of 60,000 people? I don't mean to sound crass, but on pure numerics, that does not pass the smell test no matter what you do. And I think a lot of people have used this as an opportunity to gain some power they wouldn't otherwise gain. And I think a lot of people are using this as a chance to, in their minds, demonstrate to America why we need a big, expressive government. And I don't like it at all, I'll be honest about it.
So far from the polling data that exists, it's been running about 2 to 3 to 1 on supporting stay-at-home orders. being right versus opening back up. How is public opinion shifting on sheltering and getting to a place where the public gets comfortable with doing things before COVID-19 emerged?
Well, I suspect we've seen a significant change over the last couple of weeks. If you would have taken those polls 3 or 4 weeks ago, I don't think the numbers would have been as close as 3-1 or 2-1. I think even back then, even with folks who were similar to me politically, I was hearing people say, you know what, we got to take this seriously. We got to have the stay-at-home orders and whatever. I was one of the few people back then that said we shouldn't do it. Now, we're 2 or 3 weeks later, people are really starting to see this hit their pocketbook. They're seeing their job situation put into jeopardy. They're seeing their income be affected negatively. And now, since people are starting to say, wait a second, have we gone too far? And am I really supposed to be a prisoner in my own home after I have been for 2 or 3 weeks? And some of these numbers aren't making sense. So I think people are slowly starting to question some of this. I think that trend is going to continue the longer that some of these orders stay on. And as I see other states and other parts of the country opening things up and they see it going well, I think it's only going to ratchet up.
And there are people protesting stay-at-home orders now. Earlier, I discussed a comment where it was claimed it was the same thing as yelling fire in a crowded theater where protesters were putting their lives in jeopardy, where they could unknowingly contract the virus from someone near them with it in their system as the rationale of outlawing any public protests while not violate the First Amendment. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think if anybody is yelling fire in a crowded theater, if we want to use that comparison, I think if anybody's doing that, I think it's the people who are vociferously in the stay-at-home order camp. They're the ones that consistently for 6 or 7 or 8 weeks now have been trying to portray this virus as the asteroid heading straight for Earth about to wipe us out moment. And it's not that. It's never been that. As significant as it is, it's never been something that's going to wipe out our population, yet they've demanded that we look at it that way. They've demanded that people react to it that way. They're the ones, I think, who have been really on the hype train for this thing. And I don't buy for a moment the idea that some of them have that we should outlaw the protests because of that. America has a long and storied history of protests. It's one thing that we allow that a lot of the rest of the country doesn't. And you can look back at a lot of the controversial protests through our history, and there were always attempts by the status quo to outlaw those protests or make them illegal. That happened all the time in Martin Luther King Jr.'s day. So are we going to go back to that mentality now? I certainly hope not.
There's been some people who believe these protesters are idiots. I've actually run across somebody who I was holding a sign in the middle of the protest last weekend in Springfield. I mean, are they right to be protesting, or they just do not understand the dangers?
I don't see that as an either-or question. I think you can do both. I think, first of all, I do think they're right to protest. I think the state and local governments have egregiously overstepped their bounds. If our founding fathers knew what these folks were doing right now, they would be appalled and turning over in their graves. But in acknowledging that, I don't think that means that those folks are not aware or are idiots of what the virus is and what it can potentially do. I am on a Facebook group that is the group that put together the protests in Jefferson City a few days ago, the Reopen Missouri group. I'm also someone who interacts daily with people who are in that camp. I would say I'm in that camp myself. I've not heard one of these people, to a man, I've not heard one of them say, oh, the virus doesn't exist, or I'm not worried about it. No one's saying that. Everybody understands that it's deadly to 1% to 2% of the people that catch it. Everybody understands that it's not something to be trifled with. But at the same time, they're doing what Americans have done from day one. Americans in our culture and in our country, if you look at our history, we have understood the risks to our lives that exist, and yet we've always been able to weigh that against the potential of putting together a good life for our families and ourselves. You look at the people who journeyed westward in the 1800s to homestead and get a land for themselves and raise their families and have a better life. Every last one of them understood that their lives are on the line every day that they went out there. It was very dangerous. but they weighed those dangers against the potential of creating a better life and a place of their own for their families, and they did it. You look at the people who participated in the Industrial Revolution and worked in the factories in the late 1800s and early 1900s, in factories that we would consider dangerous today. They knew the risks, but they did it because they knew there was the potential for a good life for their families. You look at the people who built the skyscrapers in New York City and the big cities on the East Coast when there were no safety measures in place. And they knew the significant risks. They took them in order to make a life for their families. You look at the people who worked in the coal mines all those years. Very risky. They did that for their families. That's all we're doing today.
You've been one of the few voices of the opposition 6 weeks into the shutdown. Illinois, Missouri, and St. Louis County are going very divergent paths. I've stated how I feel about Governor Pritzger. Your assessment of Governor Mike Parson and Mayor Lita Crewson handling COVID-19 shelter orders compared to Illinois.
Well,
we got about 2 minutes.
Yeah, as far as Lita Crewson goes, as far as San Pedro County Executive and St. Louis County goes, I think of them about the same way I think of Pritzker. I think they've overreacted, and I think they're being very opportunistic. On CNN on Super Tuesday, there was a panel discussion when we were first talking about coronavirus, a discussion of how this could be used to demonstrate to the American people they need a healthy federal government, and they need a government to take a big part of their lives over again. I think that's what they're playing off of. Parson, on the other hand, I kind of think he's on the fence. I think he tried to hold out as long as he could, but as with a lot of the rest of his governorship, I think he wilted to pressure that he didn't need to wilt to. I would really like to see him develop more of a backbone and say, no, we're opening this thing up. Forget what all the big government folks say.
How will the local wrestling scene recover after COVID-19? Will fans be willing to turn out in the numbers they did before?
Well, I think no one knows for sure, but I think the wrestling business will react about like any other sport or form of entertainment will. There may very well be a period of time where people are a little trepidatious to go out or, to restaurants or sporting events or movie theaters or wrestling or whatever. I don't know how long that will be, but my gut tells me that the longer these stay-at-home orders go on, the less period of time that will be that people are trepidatious when everything is lifted. They're going to want to get out of the house, and when they see other people getting out and having fun, they're going to want to do it too. After that period of time goes by, can wrestling get the same numbers they used to before? Yeah, I think they can. I think it's going to come down to what it always comes down to: the quality of show you put on, the quality of your booking, and how you put on a show. If you do those fundamentals well after this is all over, I think you'll still have success.
Travis Cook, thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Come see me on TFR Live, on TFRLive.com every Sunday night, 10 p.m. Central Time, for America's Evil Genius.
All right. That'll do it for this edition of PWCI This Week, the Crimey News Night. Until next time, the spin is making me dizzy.